First of all, thank you very much to IIM and to Professor P.D. Jose in particular for inviting me. And I've never been to IIM before, so this is the first time. And also I'd like to thank the British Council for helping me reach here from the UK. It was good timing because we happen to have a small window of opportunity in terms of not having lectures at this time of year. So also thanks to Professor Mukherjee for introducing me, and I'm not going to give you a lecture on cancer. Trust me, I don't want to put you all off to sleep and leave with a bad taste at the end of this lovely conference of 2 days. So I have several roles in the university. First of all, I'm also a researcher, I also teach, but more importantly, I'm very passionate about teaching and learning. And this is where part of the discussions in this session is about the motivations and the incentives that we have to do what we do. Now we are in a room, can I just have a show of hands? How many of you teach? Excellent, so we all do. We all share that same passion. Now, this is why I think part of this discussion is about challenges as well, not just the opportunities. I'm sure the 2 days have a very rosy picture of what the future is bright, the future is digital, of course it is, but it comes at a price, and that's what we can also discuss today. So, this is the most important question I'm going to start. You might be wondering, maybe, Bath, is that really a word? And a university called Bath? So, just to give you some context, actually, the University of Bath was started by the Romans. It's the only place in the entire United Kingdom which has its own underwater spring, heated underwater spring. So the water comes out from a volcanic geyser in the ground, temperature of 42 degrees. And the Romans, when they settled around here, just like Rome was surrounded by 7 hills, Bath is also surrounded by 7 hills, and they called it the city of Bath. And it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, brilliantly located, not very far from London, 90 minutes on the train. And it's also known for its Georgian, this is the actual spa, the Roman spa, which is the UNESCO World Heritage Site. If you notice over here, the water is actually green. So although the idea behind this water was supposed to be healing, it turns out that it's actually toxic. You have to, there's a proper place, a modern spa which has this now, but it's lovely from the history side of things. The second thing it's known for is, of course, the Georgian architecture. All the buildings in Bath have a typical Bath stone. You won't find a red or a white or a gray or a blue building. They're all made from the local quarries from the Bath stone, so that's what it's famous for. And I shall quickly move on to that. The next thing is the university is located on top of one of these hills, and this is where I am. I have been, as you can guess, I come from India, born and brought up in Bombay, did my PhD there, went to Belfast. From Belfast, I went to Brookhaven National Labs in New York. From New York, I came to Bath. So it's been a series of Bs. And I ended up have my 2 children here, and so I've been in Bath for about 18 years or so. What I'm going to talk to you today is a little bit give and start. Now, I think we've Moocsed ourselves to death with these 2 days. So I'm not going to concentrate too much on Moocs per se. But I also want to give this example that sort of referred to of inside cancer, and then end with the challenges and opportunities. So, we've all heard of Clay Christensen by now. If you haven't, I just want to talk about how this digital disruptive innovation system works. And coming from the background of how this evolved, the theory that Clay put in earlier was that you have 2 performances of, if you look at performance over time, you have the market forces where your customer might be highly demanding or might be, and therefore expensive, whereas you might have customers who want a cheaper option. And typically, when you have some new model, which is the incumbents sustaining trajectory where they're trying to reach to the highest denominator in terms of the high-paying customer, which wants a high-quality service, that is the usual trajectory. But typically, what you have is a disruptive trajectory, which is this new entrant who offers a service or a product which is cheaper, but caters to the middle stream of this customer demand. And stemming from this, I don't want to talk about disruptive technologies right now, but essentially online education is part of that. Clay's view was that this online education is disruptive. And we've seen how there was open courses before distance learning existed, but as the advent of courses like edX, Coursera, and FutureLearn, which have changed the entire or transformed the education as we know it now. And God, have we seen this slide before several times? Taken from Wikipedia, obviously. You all know the construction. I think one of the things that was lost in the dialogue a bit was the actual origins of Moocs. Remember, the whole point of it was this O, open, free. The altruistic nature of how Moocs came about was that it should be a global education for all. Anyone, anywhere in the world should be able to access high-quality education. Not just education, high-quality education. And you have different forms of construct too. You know, the X-MOOC versus the C-MOOC. The C-MOOC was supposed to be a collective. It's not like I am the expert standing here, I know about everything and you're going to learn from me. The idea is that we work together to come up with ideas and constructs that we can develop together to form a course. There's also quasi-MOOCs, but I won't go into that today. There's also change in how we look at MOOCs. It's no longer necessarily massive or open. You have online courses, but you have to pay for it. It might be a small group, small private open courses, or MOCs, massive open courses. And one of the things that gets lost is also the balance. Now we are physically here at a conference. Why do we need to be here? We could have just done an online conference. After all, this is the digital age. Why do we have to be physically here? There are benefits of learning socially, interacting, talking, discussing things. That's where a lot of the learning actually happens. So there are pros and cons when we look at online education. And for me, in particular, it's not about the teaching. It's not about putting a course out there. It's trying to ensure that the people who are listening actually understand the pedagogic benefits are there. And again, you have to be sure that you are able. Have you heard of this term, seeing the wood for the trees? Anyone? Yes. So it's being not focusing on the minutiae, looking at the big picture. What are we doing this for? So what is the pedagogic wood? Is that embedded within your MOOC? And don't just be driven by the technology. The technology shouldn't be driving the course. The course should use the appropriate technology to make sure it works. That, for me, is the big thing. So let me start off with this course, Inside Cancer. And I'll talk about how it works as a blended MOOC, in the sense that, why did I do it? It was a course that I already ran for my on-campus students. But cancer is a subject that touches most of us, either directly or indirectly. And there's a lot of ignorance and misconceptions that exist on how cancer works. And my idea was, I wanted to make sure that people understand what cancer means, what is the genetics behind it, and why is it impossible to cure, cure being the operative word here. So that was my main motivation, was to serve the unserved, people who are affected by it, people who have no access to educational tools. They could use this MOOC. And so when it was FutureLearn, which was the first UK platform, Simon Nelson talked about it briefly. And what I really, really like about FutureLearn is the amount of support that's given to academics who create these courses. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Simon Nelson alluded to that yesterday, but that is true. it's not just, I'm doing an on-campus course. I have no idea how to teach to a classroom of millions. I need to be educated in how to do this, how to convert this format differently. So FutureLearn were very good. We have a team at Bath who also support us in delivering that. And what it was is an exercise or an experiment in collaborative learning. So let me show you what I mean by that. So it's really, like I said, I come from Bombay, and I really passionately believe in global education free for all. And I have a free textbook, an ebook, which can be downloadable for free by anyone in the world. And I also have this course that I was running to my second-year students on campus. So what I did was, first of all, okay, my students, all they're bothered about is exams, assessments, marks. That's the key driver. And I wanted to see, let's see if I convert or adapt this into an online course, which is a beginner's guide to cancer genetics. So anyone in the world who has no biology background, I mean, it's in English, you have to know English, but it's from the beginning of B, of biology, of cancer, right to treatment, how to treat cancer. So it was meant to be a beginner's guide, and that is the biggest challenge, actually. How do you teach someone, a school kid, to a medic, a doctor? The content has to apply and be relevant to all of them. And the motivation for this group is primarily just to learn. They just want to understand cancer. And so the idea was that I use this course for both my campus students and the online community, and build this collaboration through these discussion forums on this FutureLearn site. And it was really, I'll show you some data. It's how brilliant that is. Students on campus understand they're actually talking to people who are suffering from cancer directly. They know what's going on. Whereas the global learners get the detailed help and support from the students. This is what it means. This is what a gene means. This is what this P53 or a tumor suppressor gene means. So that detailed collaborative explanation happens on this course quite nicely. And the design of this course was essentially short, very short videos, 5 minutes, that's it. Articles, extra reading materials to accompany that articles. How do you read? How do you pull out information from the web? Even on Google, you can still pull out critically evaluative pieces of work. So it's not just checking out whatever the first thing you see. So how to retrieve quality information, how to discuss, putting little activities, assignments, courses to get that engagement from this online community, and also self-assessment. I'll give you a few examples of, let me see if this video works. But it's sort of a high-quality, interactive videos. So this is Professor Lawrence Hurst, who talks about a gene, but it's using animations in the background. I know we talked about animations. I'm a convert. I like animations. It helps me understand things better. It makes it simple. So we have little videos like this, and then we have interactions and discussions. So the team, when I put this course together, remember it was only me doing the course to my on-campus students. But when I have to do it online, I have to bring in the technology guys, I have to bring in my collaborators, my clinical oncologists, I have to bring in fellow scientists, all of us working together, and that was actually brilliant. The first meeting, I still remember when we were just sitting down, storyboarding, what are we going to do? How are we going to create a narrative? How are we going to make this message simple so that a school kid to a doctor can understand this material well? And that is what bringing this team together was all about. Also, what I learned from this exercise was how do you engage online students? How do you bring discussions together? So we had every week at the end, this was a short 4-week course. Each week at the end of that, I did a little podcast, picking up questions and answers. I get the online community to ask questions, and I also pose a question. Why haven't we cured cancer yet? And what you see on the right are discussions and replies and questions from that community of learners, including campus students, including the global learners. And this is what makes it work, really. One of the biggest positive things we get back is that actual engagement with academic staff, with the students. That is really the key that keeps that student from completing the course, understanding the course. And I mean, the completion is not the key. For me, it's about understanding. There's also little quizzes, self-assessments. There's also little peer review tasks. So I give them a little scenario, a role play. So let's say you're a biomedical scientist working in the R&D lab of a company, and you've discovered this new target for treating breast cancer. What do you think the target molecule could be? And they have to write a short 300-word piece about this. Not that, but fellow learners have to comment on that piece. So they have to give feedback on each other's work. So I think that was wrong. Maybe you were thinking of these lines, or I really like this idea that you're thinking of this target. So that engagement and discussion happens, and that is really key to making sure you get learning happening on the other side. It's only through discursive means that you get the most things sticking in your head.
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes.
Peer assessment, yes, yeah. So it's a 4-week course. We had over 41,000 learners and a retention rate of 36, which compared to most other Moocs is quite high. It's an average of 20% across other Future Learn courses. And of course, 98% of the respondents said, we had a little survey at the end to ask questions about what they felt. And they, of course, exceeded what their expectations of learning new things. So these are sort of qualitative measures of success, really. From the sort of demographics we had, mainly it was, again, very typical of Future Learn, is you have females taking courses, and mainly from OECD countries. From non-OECD countries, it tends to be younger males. Mostly, you have 55% of learners are in the younger age bracket, from 18 to 45. 45 is young, yeah. Also, in terms of comments, so the amount we have a rich data, learning analytics. Future Learn gives us good data on that. It tells us how many students are posting what comments, and we know from school pupils, we can identify whether there's a school pupil or a university student or a healthcare professional or a cancer patient or the general public, and we can monitor who's posting comments. Does that come as a surprise? If you look at the number of comments, you see the general public posted the most comments. School pupils and university pupils posted the least number of comments. What does that tell us? The way we teach, it's a very instructivist mode of teaching. I say something, someone's sitting in front and listening. They're not confident in asking questions, whereas the general public, they're there to learn. They're not there to get marks. They simply want to understand. And so they tend to ask questions a lot more. And that's why you can see the average number of comments posted by the general public was over 700. And it creates this huge community of learners. And these are some of the, I'm not going to read them out, but these are some of the positive comments. And to be honest, I was quite surprised. I'm so used to getting student feedback. In the UK, we have to get feedback from evaluation from each course. And students are much more ruthless than the general public. The general public were more open, more grateful, because they're getting this free material. And so they tended to be very, very, very positive. Now I want to focus on, you might get the sense, as sort of said at the start, sounds great. What's wrong with this? It's not easy. Remember, especially in the most universities, the pressure is different. I come from a department where research is king. In the sense, everyone's focused on getting their research papers, the publications. Why should they bother doing a MOOC? Why should they bother putting their content online? What is in it for them? What's incentivizing them? For me, it was purely altruistic reasons that made me do this, and more of an experiment, really. So if I had to identify challenges, I think the first thing is, what is the course for? Who is it for? What's the target, or what do you want them to learn? I think for me, that would be the biggest question of all. It's not just about skills, especially in biomedicine. It's about making an argument. You know, you cannot get a cancer drug looking at big data. It can help you identify targets, but it's not, someone still has to go into the lab and do the experiments, get the data to get that analysis. So part of that is having that critical thinking about asking the right question. That is quite key, and you can only do that through discursive arguments being made. So when you're designing a course, you have to make sure that you choose the right course for the right audience. Even the evolution course, we knew that in the UK and around the world, evolution is not accepted. It's considered a theory by some faiths, by some religions, but it is part of the curriculum. Schools have to teach evolution. So we wanted to equip teachers to make sure teachers not just understand evolution, but we give them all the resources. We give them lesson plans, activities, what to do in a classroom, how do you engage the students, related to the curriculum topics that helps them understand. So again, making sure that your MOOC is targeted at the right audience. The title, having the right title is key, as you saw from the explanations earlier. Who was it? I can't, maybe it was Professor Das. Naran Das was talking about Professor Zhu in China. He just got the right name and he got the people. Now this is an undervalued point, is creating the culture. Why would an academic want to do a MOOC if there's nothing in it for them? If they are being measured by research, they are going into academia because of the research. They're not going into academia solely for the teaching. So getting them out of the labs to create this MOOC is the first big challenge. And also, if you incentivize or reward faculty, it helps motivate people a bit more. And I know in the UK things are changing. We now have appointments of professors of education from people from science backgrounds or other backgrounds, disciplinary backgrounds, being promoted on the basis of their learning and teaching. That change is happening. And also about engaging students online, motivating and engaging them through various activities which you learn. And don't get complacent. Now, one point I want to make is content. Remember, in subjects, things change, things evolve very quickly. In 1 year, things that are in one paper might have changed. And this is one of the challenges of Moocs in particular, because it's static in some way. Remember, the research evolves very quickly. Things I might say in my MOOC 3 years ago, the latest research paper might counter-argue against that. There might be evidence that shows that this is not the case. I have to update my content and make sure that's possible to do. But also access. Now, this is something people don't talk about, is access to the literature, the research literature, papers. It's not simply about learning to do X, to do Y, to do Z. It's about thinking this through. What is happening in the field? How has the area moved on? And that usually is through publications. But publications are behind a firewall of the publisher. You do not have access to all publications. And that is one big challenge. Clearing IPR issues, clearing copyright issues for papers is a big challenge when you're creating a MOOC. That's something to watch out for as well. I'm sure Vasanthi will also talk about that in a minute. There are positives to it. So if there are people in the audience who are thinking of doing a MOOC, what I would say is there are benefits that you might not realize just yet, but it can happen. And for me, in the United Kingdom, we have something called as the REF 2020, which is a research excellence framework happening in 2020, where every institution is monitored for the quality of their research through papers. So I've been selected to do an impact case study on this cancer book. I've got a book chapter. I've also got conference papers. There's also opportunities for collaboration. And lastly, I want to leave it with this slide, which is simply a comment from one GP, a general practitioner, doctor, who suffers from advanced metastatic breast cancer. And for me, this is really the reason why I do this, what I do. It's as a consequence of this course, I have had my breast cancer sequenced and a specific mutation was identified, and now she can she can ask her doctor to give her a specific treatment based on this mutation. Had she not done the course, she wouldn't have got that opportunity. Right.